Hello, my name is Matthew Kelly, and for my AP Gov final project, I decided to go with option three, which was to create a lesson plan. And my topic is January 6th, 2021, and the riots, the rally, and the events that followed it. I think it would be a pretty interesting lesson to teach and, show the effects that it had on our government. So to start off, I'm just going to go through, the requirements for option three. So context, experience, action, evaluation, and reflection. So to start the lesson, and from a context standpoint, I would hope that the students of the class have some sort of prior knowledge about January 6th. Hopefully, they know that the Capitol was rioted, that, you know, that was an event that happened that is part of our history. I'm not expecting them to have a lot of knowledge about it, but I hope they know it's in connection to voter fraud and the 2020 election. So experience kind of goes hand in hand with that. We lived through it as kids. We saw that. We got home from school on January 6th and we all watched it unfold. It happened while we were at school. So, I remember personally our sophomore year, the hallways were buzzing with what was happening, and some teachers have been had it on. So everyone has experience. If you're teaching this lesson's like pretty easy to teach because it's happened recently, and it's relevant and it's still relevant. So for action and like in terms of homework and tests, there will be one homework assignment. This lesson's 3 days long, and there will be one homework assignment that follows a video that we watch in class about January 6th and the events leading up to it and what happened after. It's a pretty insightful video. So there will be a worksheet on that, and then at the end of the 3-day unit, there will be a test, just to make sure everybody's paying attention and everybody's gathering the knowledge in a productive way. At the end of the test, there will be an open-ended essay question where students are asked to kind of state their opinions on January 6th and answer the essential questions that I will get to in a minute. I think the easiest way to show my vision for the lesson is to just kind of walk through the slideshow that I would show the students. That's kind of just my vision of how I would teach this subject. Let's go. All right, so we start off asking the essential questions that will go with the unit to keep in mind while learning. So, what ultimately led to the riot on January 6th? What instigated the riot? Who was accountable? How can we avoid this? What are the lasting effects on our nation? So these will not only be questions that you want to be asking yourself during the lesson, but keep in mind for the test at the end, because these will be short answer. To start this lesson from an information standpoint, it's really important to kind of just give some context on the 2020 election and, how heated that kind of was and why it led to the events that it did. So we give some facts on the 2020 election, talk about mail-in ballots and the effects that had. COVID played a big role in this election. Talk about the massive voter turnout, 160 million Americans, and ultimately say that Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the election and that Trump was not happy about this. The next slide would be on voter and election fraud. And I think it's important if you're teaching about an election that kind of went south. It's important to kind of inform the class about what exactly voter and election fraud is. So give like a clear definition of kind of what was happening, and especially in the 2020 election, it's a term that kept coming up and was ultimately the reason that the rally took place, and that led to the violent riot. So we give we give a clear definition of voter fraud, and then we move to Trump's opinion on voter fraud, because that's ultimately what this lesson is about. So once we set some important context within the lesson, we get into the actual day of the main topic, which is January 6th. So we start off with the Save America rally that was organized by Donald Trump. And we kind of say that, this was definitely an organized and planned event dating back to December 19th. He called for a wild protest on January 6th. And you kind of just want to show that, this event was, kind of bound to get out of hand. The next slide is, just a quote from President Trump that he said at the rally, and I just think it's important to include because it kind of sets the tone of what that day was like. The next slide in the lesson is talking about the riot itself, and I would start off by showing the YouTube video that's featured in the slide, because it offers a really interesting first-person perspective on what really happened inside the Capitol. And then, in the slide, I go into some numbers about how many people were there and what eventually happened, and how it became violent, and unfortunately 5 people died from this riot. It's probably the most important slide because it shows the severity of this event. I then show a quick timeline of the events that happened on January 6th just to clear up any confusion with the students while teaching. The next slide is talking about what followed January 6th, and more particularly with President Trump. Talk about the impeachment, the Senate trial, the civil lawsuit, the criminal investigations, and ultimately the social media ban that followed. And this is kind of where I go into more detail and connect this lesson to the AP Gov classroom, and dive into, the legal fallout that happened because of this event. The next thing is just the link to the YouTube video, which will play an important role in the lesson because you'll start off by dedicating, a class and a half to watching the video to get a good understanding of what happened, and then fill out a worksheet as you watch it, and that will be classwork and homework. So the desired outcome and, end game of this lesson plan is that kids start opening their eyes and realizing that we are living in such a unique time in American history. And not only do we need to kind of look around and realize that this stuff is happening and it's changing our nation, we also just you also need to get involved and, you know, kind of realize that this is the direction our country is going, and it's not necessarily good. In most cases, it's pretty bad. So, you know, you see something like this, and this was recent, so you know it's not going anywhere. And you watch something like this, and hopefully you're inspired to make some changes and ultimately get involved.